Welcome to the Ward 5 NPA, everybody who's here and everybody who's online. My name is Andy Simon. I am on the Ward 5 NPA Steering Committee. And we are going to start with a little intro that Sam's going to put up for us to just give you an idea of what we're about, and then we'll go to public forum. So we have guiding principles. They're pretty self-explanatory, but we're creating a safe space and a welcoming place for everyone. We're trying to make it the NPA accessible to everyone and to minimize barriers for participation from anybody that wants to be part of it. We insist on being respectful to each other and being, as part of that, being aware of diverse perspectives. So if you disagree or agree with somebody, we're still going to be respectful to them, and being sensitive to cultural, racial, economic differences among us, because we're all different. We try to make it an interesting place to be, vital, fun, creative, and we do not ever, as an NPA, endorse political candidates. And we try to be fair to everyone. Next slide, please. This is a Ward 5 NPA Steering Committee. I want to say that anybody who's here or listening, that we would very much like to have more people on this group. And all you have to do is contact us at via the website, or via also CEDO and the CEDO address, or write one of us and say, I'm interested, let's talk about it. Billy Clark, I think, is going to show up. If he's not here already, Joe Derry is next to me. Terry Rivers is right here. And Nancy Stetson is sitting back there. So next slide, please. For those people who are up on Zoom, if you haven't had a Zoom experience, it's hard to believe that you haven't had a Zoom experience over these last few years, but on this mode that we're working with, the webinar mode through the city, you can raise your hand, you can mute and unmute, you can start the video if you haven't done that already. There is not a chat function as such, so we'll just have to do things, take things minute by minute, and not, pile things up in a chat. Next, please. So this is our agenda for tonight. The welcoming, then we have always have public forum at the beginning. It's a time for you, anybody, to say anything that you want to say within the guidelines, the guiding principles. And if you have announcements, questions, things that you want to gripe about, things that you'd like to bring up for the group to consider, please do. Then we're going to consider a resolution as an NPA to see if we want to send a resolution to the Public Works Commission and the City Council. And the Public Works, it's having to do with renaming the roundabout, our new roundabout up on Shelburne Road. Tiff Bluemle and Gabrielle Stebbins are scheduled to be here at 7:30 and to talk about what's going on in Montpelier. This is an incredibly short time period that we're giving them to talk about everything that's going on in Montpelier, but we'll start and maybe we'll continue next meeting. Last meeting, we did a review of we did a discussion of the ballot items. They hadn't really been formalized yet. This meeting, we just wanted to go back through them as they will show up on your ballot when you get it in the next couple of days, so that you can sort of identify, sometimes the language is not all that clear, identify which are the ballot items and what they correspond to, but we're not giving it time for a general discussion. We're just going through them. Then we have a candidate forum for the South District City Council seat. There are 3 candidates: Billy Anderson, FaRied, who's here with us, Joan Shannon, who I'm sure will be here as well, we're giving that 50 minutes or even a little more if we get to it sooner. So I would like to open public forum. This is our, we do have a screen for public forum, but all you have to know is that you should identify yourself if you want to speak, say your name, where you live, sort of in Ward 5, not in Ward 5, what neighborhood, what street. If you're speaking on behalf of an organization, please say that. We're going to limit you to 4 minutes, and we'll give you a little signal when you're getting near that time. So public forum is open to anyone who's here. Yes.
I can go back too.
Yeah, you could sit right up to the microphone. That would be great. These microphones, just in case you don't know, do not project your voice in the room, but they do make it so that people who are online or on the recording can hear you well.
Thank you. My name's Ilana Blanchard, and I live on South Champlain Street. And I'm here tonight not as a Ward 5 resident, but because I also serve on the Burlington Dog Task Force, which is a temporary committee set up to examine some of the issues around dog ownership in Burlington and make some recommendations to the mayor and the council. And so a subcommittee has been looking at off-leash concerns. There are really only 3 off-leash areas in the city. They get a very high level of use. And then there are a lot of off-leash dogs throughout the city and very limited enforcement. So in order to address this, they've been looking for potential additional areas that can be off-leash in order to improve dogs' well-being, but also to provide more opportunities for off-leash dogs so that in areas where they should be on leash, that can be better enforced and enforced more equitably. And then they are also hoping to have off-leash areas that are distributed throughout the city so that people can easily access them from their homes. So they're looking for feedback from people who live in Burlington, people who use Burlington recreation areas, and people who have dogs and people who don't have dogs. And they will be taking this information and using it to refine their list of proposed off-leash areas and make a final recommendation. So I have a handout here. Please look on Front Porch Forum. There should be postings about it. I think we'll also come back in March and just remind people, but I believe it's closing around March 15th. So maybe not this one again. Also look on the Burlington Parks and Recreation website, and you should be able to find a link there, and on their Facebook page and other places. Contact me, and I'll just hand this around. Thank you.
Ilana, how was the dog task force constituted? How did it come to be?
Yeah, so I believe that there were some members appointed by the council, and then some members, I'm not sure how they were selected. I know Parks and Recreation put out a post on Front Porch Forum, which I responded to. So I'm actually represent non-dog owners. And I think I'm one of 2 non-dog owners on the task force.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other announcements or questions or concerns for public forum? Carolyn Bates.
Okay, I'm unmuted, right?
Yep.
Okay. I live at 10 Caroline Street, and I just wanted to talk about a few things. Jovial is putting in what I think is going to be an outrageous sort of bathhouse, like the Canadians are doing, across from dealer.com in that Pine Street land, along with I think it's some sort of a bowling alley, small bowling alley. And I'm very much for both of them. The other thing that's happening is that our enterprise zone is 4% of the city, and 25% of the enterprise zone now has a housing overlay. I believe this is the right thing, so that they can add housing to the enterprise zone, which is not allowed at the time. I can't, I'm very mixed on all of this. It's basically Russ Scully owns the parking lot below the big building on Lakeside. I think it's 125. And it goes all the way to Sears Lane because he's picking up the land that used to be the homeless camp. And he, I guess, is going to put housing and some building in there. This is a housing overlay that's not specifically for Russ Scully, but it appears he's the only one on the books in the 25% housing overlay that might build. And in listening to him talk with Melinda Moulton, he said he wanted to put in less than 500 units. He, to me, has a philosophy that I really agree with and I like. And he's done an absolutely beautiful job at the end of Lakeside in the old Blodgett plant that he now calls Hula. So I'm saying okay to building housing and the businesses there. However, we had it zoned for 6 stories, and now in the housing overlay, they're asking for 8 stories. And I've driven around and around and around looking at 8 stories, and I've done a lot of drawings, and I can say, to me, 8 stories is not good. That we should keep it at 6 or lower. It's too tall. It's just too tall. It's not a friendly space. It'll cause a lot of shadow, and it's not a neighborhood feeling like space. And as I looked at all of the buildings, I would say more than 50% are 1 story, probably more like 80%. The Innovation Center is 65 feet, which is 4 stories because they're 15 feet each. And then there are a few other buildings. There's the old Champlain School, I think, is maybe 4 stories, but not as tall. But otherwise, everyone else, there's a few 3-story buildings in Lakeside, but that's mostly 1- and 2-story buildings. Hula is all 1 story, maybe 1.5. So 8 stories is just totally not good. Housing and having Russ work down there is totally good. 8 stories is too tall. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. So, public forum, FaRied.
I just have an announcement to make, actually an invitation to everybody.
Could you say your first?
My name is FaRied. I live on Lismere Street, and I am also a volunteer for Democracy in Action, the group of voters who are organizing to put the petition on the ballot for question 7 and question 8. We are hosting an event tomorrow. It's a community dinner and discussion. Tomorrow we will be at the Robert Miller Center in the New North End from 6:30 to 8:30. Everybody is invited. And also on Saturday, we will be hosting the dinner and discussion event at Democracy Creative at the soda plant at 266 Pine Street from 7 to 9. There will be free barbecue meal, brisket, chicken, and vegan option by People's Kitchen. And we would love it if all our neighbors could join us to talk about some of the questions surrounding the ballot items, specifically question 7 and question 8. But there's also been discussion about other questions on the ballot. So this is our chance to find out more about these issues and to share your thoughts and ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other items for public forum? No? All right. And let's move on. We have, as a steering committee, decided to follow the lead of the Ward 2-3 NPA and suggest a resolution for your consideration as an NPA. The way resolutions work in the NPA, we don't do that very often in this NPA, but we have in the past. And somebody proposes a resolution for the NPA. If it passes those present, by those present, we send it along to the appropriate authorities as an advisory statement. It has no binding authority at all, but it does have the power of the NPA to make a suggestion. In this case, this is a suggestion to the Public Works Commission in Burlington because they're the appropriate authority for naming streets and other entities in town. And we're also sending it to the city council. Our two city councilors, Ben Travers and Joan Shannon, have both expressed support for this resolution in email communications. So, and I think it's possible that the city council has already expressed their support at the last meeting. I failed to double check that, but we can ask Joan when she shows up as well. So this is the resolution, and we have it up on the screen here too. Community activist, former transportation planner, and former NPA steering committee member, Tony Redington, he was a steering committee member in Ward 2-3 NPA, passed away this summer. In recognition of Tony's decades of tireless advocacy on behalf of pedestrian and bicycle safety, his commitment to transportation equity, and his years of teaching Burlington residents about the efficiency and elegance of roundabouts, the Ward 5 NPA hereby requests that the Shelburne Street roundabout be officially designated the Tony Redington roundabout. Discussion on this resolution or questions? Jane, are you doing?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I was, but whether there would be any informational thing around the roundabout itself, or anything like a little. I mean, I think it would be nice if there could be something to read about Tony Redington on a sign, like a memorial or something like. Like a little memorial or something, but will it say his name? Will it say what will it mean? I mean, will there be the name of the roundabout anywhere on the roundabout or near it? And it's a suggestion to have an informational sign, a little informational sign somewhere about that.
Jane, thank you for that suggestion. I think it's a great idea. I think if and when the Public Works Commission does accept this idea of renaming the roundabout or of naming the roundabout, then all of those things have to be considered, I think. And do you have ideas about where it would be good to place a memorial to Tony or an information sign? Anybody have ideas?
Yeah, now not me. It have to be in a safe place and not make people stop their cars.
Right, we wouldn't want to stop their cars, but Jane, you walk through the roundabout a lot, so maybe you could think about where a good place to be to put up a sign would be. That would be great. And we can, when the Public Works Commission does take this up, it would be good to sort of talk to them and bring them suggestions. I think that's a great idea, Jane. Thank you.
Sure, will do.
Other discussion about the resolution?
I think we're gonna put that sign next to the ped path. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Not in the middle of the road.
No, not in the middle. I don't think in the middle would be a very good place for it.
I don't know that came up when Ward 2-3 proposed this.
I don't know
but
either.
It would probably be up to the Public Works to decide how to commemorate it,
Right.
And we're just suggesting that process begin. So
Right.
definitely support that.
What's people's, just as a sidelight, what's people's experience been with the roundabout?
We love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Thumbs up over here.
Works
Yes,
great.
Yeah.
that's definitely been
Um,
my experience.
Yeah, I don't see pedestrians using the push button. They just walk across. And I guess anyways, or and a which I guess you don't necessarily um I it's it's it can be, I mean, I can see that it's cars don't always obey, aren't always obeying things either. um but I guess they get honked at, and so by other cars when they don't, so yeah.
So Jane, have you found it easier to walk across than it was when it was the rotary?
I found it. Yeah, I think cars are going slower. That is true. Cars are paying more paying more attention than they used to. It's good that is wider than it was before. I mean, yeah, I like the way it's been an improvement. Yeah.
So is there more discussion about the resolution?
Redington Roundabout has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
This one behind me.
Oh, yes, Alana.
I would just say in every meeting I was ever in with him, he brought up roundabouts. And certainly was a strong advocate for them, so it seems entirely appropriate.
Yes, Tony Redington was one of the most ferocious, I would say, in a way, even though he's a very gentle man, advocate for roundabouts that I've ever met in my life. Yeah. And hopefully this isn't the last roundabout in Burlington, from my point of view. You know, having been converted by Tony to the idea of roundabouts, it definitely seems like it would help a lot of, not just in Burlington. I was driving through Shelburne the other day and thinking, boy, a roundabout would sure help this intersection. Other discussion about the resolution or about Tony? We decided that in thinking about how to vote, that we didn't really need a secret ballot for this particular resolution. Sometimes in the past, we've had more controversial resolutions and wanted to do it on a secret ballot. So if there's no further discussion, I think we'll ask people online to raise their hands. Jane already has her hands raised. So you can either do your electronic hand or your actual hand. And people in the room to raise your hand if you're in favor of the resolution.
Unanimous.
All right, thank you. And anybody opposed to the resolution? Anybody abstaining in this vote? So it looks like it's passed unanimously, as far as I can see, by the Ward 5 NPA, and we will send it along to the Public Works Commission and the City Council. Thank you. All right, we're ahead of schedule. We could even give you 5 more minutes, Tiff and Gabrielle. What do you think?
2 minutes.
Could you fill it up? 5 more minutes? We have our 2 state representatives, Tiff Bluemle and Gabrielle Stebbins, here to give us an update on what's going on in Montpelier. Remember to unmute yourselves, please, and take it away.
Gabrielle, you want to lead off?
Sure. So I'll just give a sort of a quick summary of what I see being talked about in the House. I'm somewhat aware of some of the things that are going on in the Senate, but oftentimes we get pretty absorbed in the House on the work that we're working on. But there's been both in the Education Committee and also in the Agriculture, Foods, Forests Committee, I think. There's been a lot of investigation into universal school meals. There has been in the House Commerce Committee a lot of focus on unemployment insurance provisions, and they're just starting in on a workforce omnibus bill to start to think about what are the opportunities there. Obviously, we know that we have not enough people for all of the need in the state. So trying to figure out where to really proactively put scarce resources to make sure that we're connecting the dots between the gaps in workforce with well-paying jobs that'll be exciting and interesting for potential workers. Government operations, I got to say right now, I'm pretty happy not to be in there. They're talking about sports wagering and slight tweaks to elections, which is important. They have started taking testimony in terms of some of the news that we've seen about sheriffs and behavior of sheriffs across the state. I should back up that although it is February 16th and we've been there a long time, the first year of the biennium is always a very slow start. The first 3.5 weeks or so are usually a lot of introductions. Each committee ends up hearing from all of the departments, all of the divisions within the departments, so that everybody within the committee has the same grounding point in terms of what the responsibilities are of different entities within state government, what their budget is, what they've achieved, what they haven't. And so the first year is always a little bit slower to actually start really engaging on some of the bills that people have proposed. The Health Committee has already passed out of the House Health side of things interstate compact updates. This is really important. This basically is an agreement or a contract between states to allow for occupational licensed individuals to essentially practice in a state that they may not live in, or that when they move to a new state, it depends on what the actual compact says, but when they move to a new state, they can start to practice immediately, that sort of thing. So going back to the fact that we know that we don't have enough people fulfilling certain jobs, we know that mental health is a big one. That's one of the bills that they passed out, is to agree to an interstate compact related to mental health counseling, and also related to physical therapists, also related to speech and audiology services. In my committee, we have been talking for the entire time on 3 bills that passed out of the House last year. So that's a little bit of a rinse and repeat, which is, when I woke up the other night, I was like, wow, we are just redoing what we did last year. Some of them didn't make it over to the Senate or didn't get through the Senate in time, and some of them were vetoed by the governor. So one is a household hazardous waste bill that we just voted out today at 11 yes out of 11. So really amazing to have universal support for something that proposes to basically require manufacturers to develop a system to actually dispose of their household hazardous waste in a way that is essentially not going to directly tax residents, which is what the current system is. We are also hearing testimony on updating the bottle bill, which hasn't been updated in 50 years. And we are also hearing testimony on developing a plan to essentially figure out how to prioritize what land in Vermont to preserve. And to set up different categories of preservation. So preservation that might involve active management, preservation that might involve some management, and then preservation that really is just very hands-off. And it's challenging. 80% of Vermont is privately owned, and it's as we see certain dairy farms close up, we can often see those properties. Families can't support the property taxes associated with them, or nobody else wants to go into that family line of business. And the thinking here is, as we start to see more climate migration, how do we identify what is the most important areas in Vermont to preserve? And then how do we always also balance that with making sure that we have the housing that we need? Because obviously we do not have enough housing. There is more I can say. I did not hit on like 6 committees, but I want to pass it to Representative Bluemle, because I've been talking a long time. And then whatever you don't hit, Tiff, I'm happy to sort of fill in from the other committees.
That's why you start first, because you are so good at just doing that overview. Thank you. And thank you, NPA members, people who show up for our neighborhood. Every time I join one of these meetings, I'm very grateful for all of you. So thank you. So I live a slightly different life. I'm almost never on the floor of the house. I am mostly in my committee room. Being on appropriations is a kind of a different experience and really interesting. And yet it doesn't enable me to have the broad overview that Gabrielle does of kind of policy that's moving through committees. But eventually I catch up, because all of those policy committees and public agencies and quasi-public agencies that have budgets that have to be approved come through our committee. And so I guess what might be most useful for you all to know is that the House and now, as of today, the Senate have passed the Budget Adjustment Act, which is a truing up of the FY23 budget, given changes that have happened over the last half year. The governor's recommended budget adjustment, we largely accepted, and it included kind of investments in state IT systems and in rural technical assistance so that they could access federal COVID relief money. But because revenue forecasts have been unexpectedly higher, I'm proud to say that the House Appropriations Committee got very bold, and we added significant money to support mental health in the southern part of the state for youth who have mental health issues and physical issues. $50 million to support new housing construction, and extending, as probably in mid-March, all of the emergency housing vouchers were to have ended, and we really didn't have a plan at all for any of the folks who are in the motels or shelters where they were staying. And the House said, no, we cannot do that. And it's in the middle of the winter. And so we made an appropriation to extend the emergency housing program through the spring, through the end of June. We are going to have to probably compromise somewhat with the Senate, but within probably the next week, we will have a budget adjustment, which is great. I think, and I don't think it's going to look too terribly different from what the House passed. So I'm very proud of the House for taking leadership on issues that are really important, and all of us have said are important for a couple of years now. concerns that I have as I'm reviewing, as we as a committee are reviewing budgets, there are a lot of vacancy savings in state agencies. They, which, you know, helps with the bottom line, but what does it tell us about what is, what we're doing to the capacity of those agencies to support the work that they're supposed to be doing? The second is the governor's budget tends to use one-time funding to fund base core functions. Therefore, you don't have a sense of continuity. You know, you can't really build a program if you're always dependent year to year for that one-time funding. and it doesn't, it distorts the true cost of government. So, and then finally, there's significant carry forward money that we're hearing about in different departments, which reflects money that has not gotten out the door, that we appropriated for certain purposes, but has not actually been spent. Some for reasons that are totally understandable. Some, I don't know, but we're pursuing those things. I've never been through this process before, so I can't really tell you what it's going to look like. I think that we've I know that we're working really hard, and we are very much reliant on the policy committees to look hard at the budgets that the different agencies have put together and to tell us what they think. And we also are then interacting with folks on the state agency side. Anyway, that is really my life right now, is digging deep into numbers. And and it's pretty fascinating because numbers do tell you an awful lot about what's prioritized, how well things are functioning. There's always a backstory to numbers. So at any rate, I did put out on Front Porch Forum today that we're taking testimony twice on the governor's proposed budget. Is open to public testimony, and the link to sign up or to submit testimony is on today's Front Porch Forum for those who want to take advantage of it. Anybody have any questions for us?
Well, I'll finish up the other committees just to break it up, and then happy to take some questions.
Oh, good. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry.
So general and housing has been really focused on family and medical leave. This has been a priority of the Democratic caucus in the House. There was an attempt a few years, a biennium ago, or two bienniums ago, to also work on this, and it did not make it through. So that's been pretty much the bulk of their time. I do understand that they have a housing bill on their wall that they do plan on picking up and digging into with some significant depth. Human Services has been working quite a bit on looking into the budget of the Departments of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, Division of Children and Families, Department of Health, and other things, but I actually need a better update on that committee. So I apologize for not having more details, because I know they are working on quite a few things. And Judiciary actually spent a fair amount of time working on the SHIELD law, which was voted out of the House. Basically what this does is protect Vermont healthcare providers of reproductive and gender affirming healthcare services, so that they, are protected and can still provide health insurance, etc. They've also been looking into eliminating the suspension of driver's licenses as a result of someone not being able to pay fines or fees related to moving violations. So as you might imagine, in a rural state, if you lose your license because you couldn't actually pay for your fine, that probably just digs you into a deeper hole and makes it harder for you to get to work to actually perhaps ever pay that fine off. So that's an area that they've been digging in as well. And with that, I'll stop. There are other committees, but that's sort of the high level of what all the things are that are being discussed and worked on. For now, give it another couple of weeks and it will change.
Thank you both for that quick run through. We have 4 more minutes to this item. Do people have questions for Representative Bluemle and Representative Stebbins and or? I actually have one. I have been curious about state support for the Burlington High School building. I know that there was much discussion last summer and or the last year about finding some state support to help cut down the cost of that. Has there been any discussion so far in the legislature about that?
A lot of discussion, not necessarily within committees at this point. A lot of discussion in terms of coordinating. So breaking it up, meaning figuring out a way to make sure that we're funding the technical center from a regional perspective. That's sort of one, it's a large multi-million-dollar amount. So breaking it up into discrete areas helps relay the message from different perspectives. So there's one effort underway to really focus on making sure that the entire region supports the technical center, because it really does receive students from the entire region. I am currently, all of the Burlington representatives have signed on to a bill that actually calls for the state of Vermont to pay for all PCB remediation in all public schools across Vermont. Clearly, that is unlikely to happen, that the state of Vermont would even have the funds for that. But sort of putting the stake in the ground that this is not a Burlington problem. This is a statewide problem, and frankly, it's a federal problem. So there is also a third approach, which is reaching out to our federal delegation to elevate this, because as schools start to come to the end of their life or just simply need construction improvements. I mean, that's sort of what happened in a way with Burlington High School. The original bond was not to rebuild an entirely new high school. It was to make some renovations. So really looking at this from a more global perspective, since there are at times a sense that Burlington should be able to figure it out on their own, really looking at this as a statewide challenge. At this point, from what I understand from a discussion last week, about 11% of the schools that have been, 11% of the public schools have been tested thus far. So we have a lot more schools across the state that are going to be, most likely showing concerning levels of this toxic chemical. So all of that is to say, yes, there is quite a bit underway, but given that the budget, which is really where this ultimately comes down, given that the budget is usually the last thing we finally vote on the very last day in May, it's going to be a marathon, not a short 3-mile race. So we will keep working on this, and what we'll end up finally seeing, how much money we get and how it's dispersed. We have heard promises that there will be something, but I don't know that we can say we know what it will be until we start to see the budget flesh out more. And then I'm starting to get in Tiff's territory.
Thank you. Jane, your hand is up. Is it still up from before?
No, I guess, what is your opinion about the proposed degradation implementation rule in the Department of Agriculture, of the Agency of Natural Resources. Do you think it needs to be strengthened? I mean, I'm in a group that wants it, that wants it, that wants changes to make it stronger and to keep more chemicals out of the waters. Have you, I mean, or do you, are you gonna wait until it goes to the floor? You may not know anything much about it, and that's okay. It doesn't matter.
I have heard conversations about this. I do not sit in that committee, but Jane, I'd be happy if you want to shoot me an email to my legislative email. It's just gstebbins@ledge.state.vt.us. I'd be happy to do a little digging because I have heard conversations about this. I just don't have a real-time update for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tiff. Thank you, Gabrielle. We'd love to have you back again soon because I know things are always changing in Montpelier, and we want to keep abreast of what's going on. So thank you for showing up and for the work you're doing.
Sure thing. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you all.
I want to give a plug to the food that we have here for the people who are here and for the people who are online. Next time, think about coming down here and showing up because we're going to have food every single time, and means you don't have to cook dinner. You can just come down here and eat snacks. And in fact, this time People's Kitchen brought us much more than snacks. Terry brought snacks for those of you that have already eaten and just wanted to nibble around the edges, but we also have vegetable dumplings and cornbread and other things, and a good part of them are gluten-free. So, and still delicious, even though they're gluten-free. So please, people who are in the room, please feel free to partake. And those of you who didn't make it down here, I encourage you to come down in person so that we can feed you. Our next item of the agenda is a quick run through of the ballot items as they are showing up on the ballot. Now that we have that that language, we just wanted to go through the ballot items. We only allocated a short period of time for this, but one of the things that's confusing about ballot items, and especially this year when there are 8 of them and they're sort of blockbusters, is that, you know, the language is not necessarily clear. So let's just go through them. These are the 8 ballot items in a list, but let's go through the actual language and we can sort of look at it on the screen and then try to just identify which thing it is. So the first thing is the approval of the school budget, which is relatively straightforward. I don't think anybody will have any difficulty identifying what that's about, and you have all the information that the school budget, school department gave you in the ballot item. And of course, you can get more information on the Burlington School District website if you want to dig further before you vote. Again, ballots should be in your mailbox, everybody's mailbox in the next couple of days, in the coming couple of days. Let's go to the next one. So ballot item number 2 is the implementation of a carbon pollution impact fee for new construction and existing large commercial and industrial buildings 50,000 square feet or larger. So we didn't actually get to talk about this the last time, and we don't really have time to talk about it this time, but this is the city council moving toward trying to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. And this is their approach to it. They're focusing on new construction and large buildings, 50,000 square feet or larger, that are when they're that exist already. And the attempt is to try to encourage people through the collection of a fee to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. And there has been some controversy about whether this is the right approach or not, but I think that you can read through. We're not going to read every word of it right now, but I don't think. But the fee would then proceed to the proceeds of the fee would then be used to convert the city's vehicles to electric, it says, and a new city fund to support clean heating technology installations for low-income households and renters, and or in the case of existing building payers, greenhouse gas emissions reduction projects at their building or facilities in Burlington. So it's moving money that they collect into electrification and support for clean heating technology for low-income people.
So I just wanted to add quickly that Darren Springer came in, I think, December to
Oh, it was in November because I wasn't here.
November.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to look at that recording, they did get into some of the, their rationale here, but basically make it, even out the cost of more renewable and traditional style heating. That was the idea. There's a lot more words around it.
Yeah. Number 3 is redistricting. So every 10 years, every census, there's a mandate to redraw the lines of, or re-examine the lines of the wards in Burlington and try to draw a map that's more equitable in terms of distribution of population. And there are guidelines of that none of the divisions that we draw can deviate more than 10% from the other ones. So there can't be more than a 10% deviation. So this is the redistricting that the city council decided on at the after the advisement of the committee. And the next slide shows how that affects Ward 5 in particular. The brown on this map is Ward 5. And I believe what happened to Ward 5 is that we lost the King Street, the King and Maple, part of the King and Maple neighborhood. Is that right, Nancy, Joan? Nancy draws these maps, so they didn't draw this. All right.
Hard to keep track. There's so many maps drawn.
Right, there are lots of maps. So there wasn't a big change in Ward 5. In any case, we're still this redistricting proposal is continuing with 8 wards and 4 districts, the boundaries for Ward 5 didn't change a lot, but we lost the Bobbin Mill and part of the King Maple neighborhood.
That's your question.
Of course.
Yeah, so is that still?
You want to go up to
Yeah.
the mic, Ilana? Thank you.
Sure. So I was just curious, is that still in the South District? Like if it's outside of Ward 5?
No.
No.
It's
5
not
and
in the
6.
South District anymore. It's not in Ward 5 and 6, which is the South District, but thank you for that question. It does change the flavor of our ward and our district a little bit. Then we have question number 4 is the question of all legal resident voting. This would change the charter of the city of Burlington to allow voters who are legal residents, but not citizens necessarily to vote in local elections for school district, school board, and city council, mayor, and it doesn't say this in the language of the ballot question, but correct me if I'm wrong, it also means that you could run for these offices if you're not citizen. So all legal residents can vote in city elections and also run for city offices. Number 5 is citing of polling places. This was a fairly technical item that basically allows the city council and the city clerk's office to cite a polling place out for, say, Ward 4 in Ward 7 or vice versa. So if there was a way that you could consolidate polling places, and correct me if I'm wrong, it allows that possibility of having a polling place that's not in your ward. Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
They mentioned, say, Edmonds as a centralized polling place. That was one that came up.
Right.
Edmonds is a good example because there was a lot of discussion about whether Edmonds had to be in Ward 6 so that they would have a polling place. And then staffing polling places both at Edmonds and then right across the street at Memorial, which we did at one point.
Thanks.
All right. So number 6 on our ballot is ranked choice voting. And we talked about ranked choice voting the last time. Ranked choice voting, for people who don't know, is that instead of just having one vote on the ballot, you can have as many as you want. And there was a good thing in our mailboxes from VPERG, I guess it was, that did a sort of a explanation of it, and with frequently asked questions. So I think you could probably go to the I don't know, for more information, is there information on the city website on this? Does anybody know? Yeah, Nancy says yes.
Yeah, we were talking about it last week.
Yeah. And find out if you're confused what ranked choice voting really is, then you should go seek out more information about it. It's another way of creating, for instance, in our, since we're already voting on with ranked choice voting for city council in our ward, when we have 3 candidates and you can rank them 1, 2, 3 on the ballot instead of just voting for one. You can also just vote for one. And you can also vote for 2. But you can't vote 3 times for the same person. Even if you want to, because your ballot will be invalidated. All right, let's go on to.
But Andy,
Yes.
you could vote 3 times for the.
But
same
they wouldn't
person, and
count
your
it?
ballot is still valid,
Oh, really?
just not
Okay.
effectively going to, it's not going to get cast 3 times. Because if you only vote once for that person, it will be cast the same every time.
Okay,
So
all
I
right.
don't want people to think that if they did that wrong and they voted for the same person 3 times, the ballot wouldn't be invalid.
Okay, I understood that, so thank you for clarifying that, Joe.
Pardon, I had my
Still
hand
in
raised.
order.
Pardon, I had my hand raised about number 5. I guess you didn't think of it. I mean, I have been raising a lower hand. I had a question of whether of how much, if you're going to allow people to vote outside of their ward, will this create a lot more work for the people running the polling places to try and find ballots for your ward, rather than just handing out ballots for their own? Is that?
Well, we happen to have a ward clerk here with us today. Charlie, do you have a comment about that?
So I think what would happen is.
Do you want to come to a microphone? Okay.
My understanding is that what would happen, like if wards 2 and 3, as they currently are composed, are in separate elementary schools. However, if you were to pass this ordinance, you'd be able to put both of them at different floors of the community center. So you could have Ward 2 voting on the 2nd floor of the community center, and you can have Ward 3 voting on the 1st floor. That's my understanding of it. And the same thing could happen in Wards 4 and 7. Instead of having it in 2 separate locations, you could have it at the same location, but in different polling places. So the boundary of your polling place would remain integral.
Okay,
So
thanks.
you'd still have to have 2 ward clerks in that scenario and 2 completely different polling places in that building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, we're gonna move on to the last 2 items on the ballot. The number 7 on your ballot, the ballot question 7 is the creation of an independent community control board for the police. This is a long item on your ballot, and I encourage you to read it very closely. And we did talk about it quite a bit in our last meeting, and there has been discussion on Front Porch Forum and elsewhere. This has been probably the most controversial, I think, ballot item so far, and it would make a major change in the in city government and create an independent department that would oversee a civilian department that would oversee the police, or would be called in if there was, as it says here, if member of said force is found to become incompetent, inefficient, or incapable for any cause, has been negligent or derelict in their official duty, and is guilty of any misconduct in their private or official life, or for any other just cause. That's the essence of it. The ballot item itself also goes on to talk about the composition of the oversight board, and you should read it very carefully. And as FaRied said, there's opportunities both pro and con to discuss these in the coming weeks. So this is definitely one that should get talked out and looked at. Number 8 is Proposition 0, and Proposition 0 is much more succinct, and it says, shall the charter of the city of Burlington be further amended to grant voters additional powers to, by petition, initiate non-binding ballot questions, binding initiatives, proposing ordinances, and referenda repealing ordinances, provided that in the case of binding initiatives and referenda, the city council fails to adopt or repeal the ordinance at issue. So this is the direct democracy ballot question. It's one that FaRied has worked on very hard the last couple of years, and it is also a rather major change in city government as constituted right now. So I'm sure that we'll talk about it at the candidate forum. So I think that I want to move on to that. Is there anything else anybody wants to say about any of the ballot items? But I just wanted to be able to, we wanted to be able to see, the order on the ballot and the way that they're written. Again, you should be getting your ballot in the next couple of days. Ballots can be dropped off at drop boxes at City Hall. There's one right here in front of this building. There's another one in the north end. And you can, if you don't want to do that, you can take them to your polling place and bring them in on town meeting day. All right, so we are going to move on to the candidate forum. We have, Sam, if you could put up the slide for that. We have 3 candidates. If Billy and Joan and FaRied, if you could come up to the microphones, that would be very helpful, because otherwise you won't get heard. Joe is going to moderate this section of the meeting, and this is the format. And Terry is going to be the timer.
It's
And
gonna work great.
hold it up to the camera too. You'll see that Terry has 1 minute and 30 seconds. Even though there's much more to say, we're going to try to keep the responses and the introductions and the conclusions short. And concise. Joe, take over.
All right, we got this. So, good evening. Thanks for coming down. I think I'm gonna start with the introduction and in the order that you are on the ballot. So you're in order alphabetically. And with 3 check boxes next to each of your names, like we were talking about. Don't fill in all 9 boxes. That was my advice. Don't fill in all 9 boxes. Just
That'd be
keep 3.
problematic. That would be invalid.
So, Billy Anderson, or Will, as on the ballot.
Either way, can I just go ahead with the introduction?
Of
then?
course. yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me at the Ward 5 NPA. It's great to be here. I actually live in Ward 6. But of course that, qualifies me to run for the South District. As for why I'm running, I love to find solutions to policy problems. That's what I do for the state government. That's what I, did for a number of nonprofits in Vermont and for the federal government in the past. And after working with the Progressive Party here for a while on their economic and social policy platform, I decided it might be time to give it a go and see if I could bring my ideas to the residents of the South End and the Hill section and see if they would be interested in having me represent them in that way on the city council. So my main ideas have to do with addressing the crunch of affordability that we're facing in the housing market. First and foremost, I think for here in Ward 5, what applies to that is my ideas for property tax reform. I don't think that given the increase in the school budget, given the increase to the school bond vote, that those burdens should be put on single family homeowners and rather should be applied to commercial properties and to non-owner occupied properties, including multifamily homes. Because I believe that in almost every case, with exceptions, that those property owners have a greater ability to pay the tax. And hand in hand with that goes with rent stabilization. A rent stabilization would prevent this increased property tax from being burdened onto tenants and would also create a safer environment year by year for tenants to rent without facing outsized increases. So these are my main ideas, for the housing policy reform. I have many more ideas about, ways that we can bring innovation to our public policy, our municipal policy in the city council. You can learn about them on my website, wa4btv.org. I look forward to going door to door, keep going door to door and meeting more of you and to answering questions here at the NPA. Again, thanks for having me. And that should be right about 30 seconds.
Perfect.
Wow.
Thank you. All right. FaRied Munarsyah.
My name is FaRied. I've been living in Ward 5 in the Five Sisters neighborhood for 25 years. I initially first got involved in electoral politics when I was working for the Infinite for Mayor campaign. Through that campaign, I've come to hear a lot of the issues that people feel like that they are feeling powerless in influencing the decisions that are being made by our political leaders. We also, I initially thought I found a flaw in our system of decision-making. In the election that brought this current administration into power in 2012, in that same election, a vast majority of Burlingtonians voted to support government policies that benefit the 99% over the profits of the 1%. And we also affirmed that people need to come before corporate profits. Now, 10 years later, I feel like the failures of policies is what we are experiencing right now. The systemic inequity actually has worsened, and I believe some fundamental change needs to be instituted in how we make decisions as a community. Please check out my website, FaRiedM.org.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you. All right, Joan Shannon.
Thank you.
Sir.
I am Joan Shannon and I'm formerly the Ward 5 City Councilor and currently the South District City Councilor. I think I know most of you and have had an opportunity over the years to really engage with, I would have to say, a majority of the constituents in the South District. And I think that my supporters would say to a person that they have disagreed with me. And I guess I'm kind of proud of that. that we can have disagreement and that people are still willing to support me, because I think that that really, it demonstrates some trust. And I would acknowledge that I am sometimes wrong and I've disagreed with myself. And I really believe in representative government, that I certainly do not have the monopoly on good ideas, and some of the best ideas that I've been able to move forward on the city council have come from members of the public, constituents, and the NPA. I am open to working with anyone. I have worked with the progressives. At times, I am the only Democrat voting against my own caucus. But I don't see municipal government, it should not be highly partisan. So, thank you. Oh, I had 30 seconds. I could keep going, but that's okay.
Thanks a lot. All right, so our format was, thank you for the introductions. We're going to try to get through a couple of questions. We have about half an hour. I'll just try to start with a different person each time, see if I can keep track of that. And I'm going to start, we did share these questions and we might have time to take a few from the room here, but I thought a good one to start with was, what do you consider to be the most important priority for this council in the next 2 years during this next term? I think I'll start with FaRied.
I believe the most important issue is to reclaim our democracy. I believe that full participation, meaningful participation is very important for us to work as a community. Many people, as you know, don't even come out to vote. They let alone come to a community forum like the NPA, where it should be one of the ways we influence decisions that are being made that impact our lives. I believe we, as a community, are dealing with, just like the rest of communities in this country, are dealing with the effect of systemic inequities and policy failures that are being exacerbated by the inability of regular people to actually influence policies that are being made. We can't police our way out of this crisis. It is the only way to solve systemic inequities is through enacting systemic reforms. That includes how we make decisions as a community, but it also needs to address the fact that in this very wealthy country, in this very wealthy community, we still have people going hungry every day. We have people who have to choose between paying rent and getting food or heat, and people going through life without having the necessary care that they need. We must address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan, do you want to take
Sure.
this question next?
I think that there are probably 3 key issues that I'm really hearing about from constituents. The first is public safety. And I think it's important to acknowledge that public safety is not limited to policing. It's much broader than that. Policing is a piece of it, and we have been in the process of diversifying policing. But a lot of our community members don't feel as safe as they did just a short time ago, and that's having real impacts when people are experiencing both personal crimes and property crimes. You know, people who I'm almost more concerned about the person who has the $100 bike stolen than the $10,000 bike stolen. That $10,000 bike is probably insured, and the $100 bike that belongs to, you know, my neighbor's child who needs that to go to work, it's critical. And we need to get a handle on that. I'm running out of time so quickly, certainly housing. People experiencing houselessness in this community is heartbreaking. It needs to be addressed. Also, I hate to say this, but we're going to be dealing again with reassessment, probably within that 2-year time period. And so we're struggling with all of those issues, and it's going to be a big issue, the redevelopment of the South End Innovation District certainly is going to be affecting this area. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'm gonna, just the question again, real quick, was the,
Yeah, oh, you're gonna read the question, okay.
I'll read it again because I should have done that the first time, or for you, Joan, but
Well, hopefully I answered it.
you did.
Okay, good.
You answered some extra priorities as well. So what do you consider to be the most important priority for the city over these next 2 years? Will?
I would say, well, although it's difficult, like Joan FaRied, to narrow it down to one, I would say reforming our strategy for housing policy is the number one. Because, although the public safety issue is critical, my thinking is that if we can address the housing issue at the root, the security and stability that shelter can give people would make really tremendous strides towards helping remedy the public safety concerns without, then a need to increase our police presence and mitigating our need to increase other resources as well. So what would this housing policy entail? For one, obviously I'd like to promote, the two measures that I mentioned before, but there's other things that we can be doing as well. I mean, building housing is a big part of it. Obviously increasing the supply is good. But I don't think that we necessarily need to be building affordable housing all the time. After all, it's very difficult to incentivize developers to build something that is not going to bring them a high rent. So I would say we should encourage developments of all kind, be it luxury, be it single family, be it whatever. And then encourage partners like the Champlain Housing Trust to increase our share of social housing. So public housing projects that have not just very low rents, but high rents as well that can help subsidize the lower ones. This model of social housing has been successful in places like Europe and like Canada. And I think that if we shifted in the next few years towards this kind of housing strategy, it would be very successful in the long run in helping remedy the issues of homelessness that we have, as well as mental health, as well as public health, and then eventually public safety as well. So that's what I would call that paradigm shift is what I think is the top priority for me and should be for the entire council.
Thanks a lot, Billy. So also with the second question, I'm going to go with what do you consider to be the most consequential question coming up on this town meeting day ballot, and why? And I guess it would make sense to go back to Joan, so we don't.
Thank you. I can't limit myself to one. I think that short term, the most consequential ballot question is question 7 about the community control of police board. And long term, the most consequential is number 8, which would allow citizens to put binding it does 3 things, but the piece of it that concerns me actually is allowing citizens to put binding legislation on the ballot without legislative review and only a cursory legal review in circumstances where there's no allowance to actually meaningfully change those questions, and they would become law. So question 7, the Community Control Board, we're actually making pretty good progress at rebuilding our police department, and I have a lot of issues with this, not enough time to go through them all, but I feel that support of ballot item 7 would completely undo the progress that we have been making. And if your goal is to abolish the police, then it would make sense to vote for it, but that is not my goal. I think we need our police department. I think we need to support our police officers. I also think that we need oversight, and there's good reason and room to change the oversight from what we have, and we have done some of that. There's more to be done. But I strongly urge people to vote no on 7, and on 8. There would be there's a lot of problems with 7, which people acknowledge. They say it can be changed in the legislature. That's not true with 8. If items are put on the ballot, they become law as is with number 8.
Thanks, Joan. Okay, Billy, so the question again was, what do you consider to be the most consequential ballot question on town meeting day?
Sure, thank you. I certainly also consider question 7, Community Oversight Board of Police to be the most consequential initiative, which I think is probably safe to say, whichever way you look at it. But I, in contrast to Councilor Shannon, am in favor of the initiative. I think it would represent a tremendous stride, not just in Burlington, not just in Vermont, but in the whole country, in terms of really striking back against what I see as a real cultural problem in our police force and in our police forces in America, which is that they act with impunity. They police themselves, and regardless of how effective the police department is in Burlington, and I do have a lot of respect for the Burlington Police Department, I think that we need this. I think that the community needs to stand up and say, we are going to oversee this force, not just the police chief. And, you know, with regard to the idea that instituting this board would effectively abolish the police, if that is going to happen because all of our officers or a majority of our officers are going to resign in response to the creation of the board, then those are not officers that I want policing the city of Burlington. I would like to have a police force in this city that appreciates the fact that the community oversees it and is not, you know, undermined by the fact that the community oversees it. Do I think that the initiative is perfect? No, I don't. And there are elements of it that I would have written differently. But overall, I think it would be a great step for our city. I think that we should vote yes, and I definitely think it's the most consequential because it would represent a big stride, not just in Vermont, for, you know, a new model of policing and public safety in this country.
Great, thanks a lot. So FaRied, same question. What do you consider to be the most consequential ballot question for town meeting day this year?
I think I share the answer of number 7 and number 8. Police does not give us public safety. Police is there to restore public order. And in a society like ours, in which extreme poverty and extreme luxury coexist side by side, enforcing order means sanctioning violence. And this order can only be maintained through the implied threat of the use of state violence. I think we are all in this together. Our community is only as strong as the most vulnerable of us. Far too many of our neighbors lack the security of housing, of nutritious food, and needed care. And that we need to address those to achieve genuine security for all of our community. I do think we are dealing with failures in policies using the police instead of addressing the root cause of social inequity. Staying the course is not an option. We need to change and reorient our government to really serve the people. We need to put the public back in control of public safety and in public policies. And that is why I think number 7 is more consequential long term. This is not something that's never been done before. In fact, we copied the Winooski's charter. And they have additional, more robust process that's been outlined. Part of our goal is to actually have one page of ballot change that people can understand easily. There is definitely legit criticism of the other of any ballot question, and I hope that people will keep in mind that the ballot questions that the council generate also have all the same issues that a petition backed ones do.
Thanks, FaRied.
Joe, if the other candidates were up for it, I imagine we all have more to say on that topic and wondered if there might be openness to a second round.
No, the number 7.
On the same question, talking about the ballot items.
Oh, that would be 8. Okay. I think we could circle back to that. I'll hit one more question to clear the airs for a second. And so what I'm going to go with here is going to be pretty different. So Billy, How could the city council do better in responding to the climate emergency?
Great question to it. A very difficult problem. And I feel like if I had a great answer, then I'd be in a lot better situation. But I think that we should look at the two biggest causes of carbon emissions, not just in Burlington, but basically across the entire world, which are heating buildings and driving cars. Because, you know, between the two of these, that actually represents something like 85 or 90% of all carbon emissions in the United States, for example. So with regard to heating buildings, I think that we should build out more renewable energy resources and use more electric heat. So solar panels, for example, we should be deploying more solar panels, maybe even wind resources in the city of Burlington, because we are getting a lot of our electricity from Quebec, but we're also heating our buildings with gas, which is, you know, not as good for the climate. So if we were able to use more renewable electricity to heat our buildings, that would probably be a pretty good stride in terms of the climate issue. And that might be something that we could affect as a city council. As for cars, we have to make it so that you don't always have to get a car to go wherever you're looking to go in Burlington and beyond. So we should expand access to public transit where possible. That means buses, because buses are more efficient. You know, they take up what would be 20 cars with people that can ride in them. If there's opportunities to expand rail access, we should take them, although that would certainly be a bigger investment and more difficult. Bike and pedestrian infrastructure in Burlington is very good relative to other cities, especially in New England. But if we made it even safer for people to use this modes of transportation, we might be able to increase the share of people that are using those rather than driving. So very difficult question, something that we need big public policies on a national scale to really have a real change. But I think if we look at the buildings and look at ways to reduce the need to drive cars, these are things we could do as a city council that might be important.
Great, thanks a lot. So FaRied, on this question, what or how could the city council do better in responding to the climate emergency?
I would say I would have a similar answer to my answer before, and I'm just gonna keep hammering that we need to be more involved in making the decisions. People who are most directly impacted by the crisis needs to be included in the conversation. I think Billy has mentioned a lot of these good ideas, including converting to electric and possibly subsidizing even some of the transportation that people need. I think we really need to listen to our neighbors and figure out and make sure that anything that we come up with, we take into consideration how it's going to impact people, especially people who are low income and people who are not as knowledgeable about the impact of the climate crisis and the impact of the decisions that we'll be making.
Great, thanks a lot. And Joan, same question. How could the city council do better in responding to the climate emergency?
Thanks. I think Billy did a good job of kind of analyzing the two main drivers of carbon in Burlington, like every place else, are home heating or heating buildings rather, and transportation. On the building front, I actually think we do a pretty good job of we've provided a lot of incentives for conversions, and I think that we're pushing about as hard as we can on that, given where technology is, where the costs are. We're doing a great job with BED in terms of providing sustainable energy. And I know there's some controversy, but I will stand by them. I think, you know, nothing's perfect and they've done an outstanding job. But with transportation, I think that we're really lacking. And I voted no on the recent elimination of minimum parking requirements. And one of the reasons for that is it was really watered down in terms of what we were requiring of developers. I think that developers should both provide parking, not leave it to, not leave that cost to individuals who are struggling with where to put their car, which is very costly to low-income people, and low-income people do drive and need cars, but also the requirements on developers to provide alternatives to vehicles to help people get around. I think that car share is a wonderful service that should have been more strongly encouraged in that. I also think our bus service is not controlled just by Burlington. People have regional transportation needs, and so we need to address that regionally, and we need partners outside of Burlington to help people get to where they need to go outside of Burlington, because a lot of people have to leave Burlington for their jobs. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. All right. So among the ones that we provided earlier, we've hit on the community control board, I think, pretty well during the most important questions, since you all pretty much chose that one, in addition to question 8. So I would like to ask about that. This would be off the map now, because you requested this basically, but how do you see the ballot question number 8? What are your concerns with the approach of having citizens and their signatories bring forward a ballot question?
On number 8, there's 3 elements of number 8. One is having access to the ballot for advisory questions, and I don't have a problem with that. And it's generally what the city does now, but there was one case where the city council didn't put that question on the ballot, and I think that that's reasonable. Also having a referendum where the public could retract something that the city council has done. I also think that's reasonable, but there's another element here that allows members of the public to put forward legislation. And I disagree that that goes through the same process that it does at the city council. When we vote at the city council, we go through these things with a fine-tooth comb before we give our approval. And that does not happen for voters in the voting booth. A good example is looking at question 7. You will have no idea what that community control board really does when you look at your ballot, because you get just a small paragraph or a couple paragraphs. We made it about as long as we've ever made anything. And I will tell you, you still will have no idea what you're voting on when you look at your ballot. And that's what will happen with number 8. You'll have city council paraphrasing what that legislation really is. And while it is possible to access the 6, 8, 12 pages of legislation, that is not a job that the typical voter wants to take on. And I think that representative democracy, you do entrust us with that deep review. And there is an ability for the city attorney is really just supposed to look at it for constitutionality and legal issues, not policy issues. And even if they find a legal issue, they're not allowed to change the meaning of the measure. So I don't know how you deal with that if the city attorney thinks there's a constitutional issue. Thanks.
All right, I have to apologize because I phrased that question really badly, but I'm still going to ask FaRied a similar line. But how can we address concerns with a citizen-driven ballot item?
I want to remind people of the ballot question in the 2019 election, proposed charter changes to strengthen and restructure downtown improvement district. I agree with the concern that Councilor Shannon raised, but again, this is something that also happens with council-generated ballot questions. Printed out, it's about 15. These are the DID questions, about 15 pages long of this legalese. That if this is like the result of you going through with a fine-tooth comb, then and we still can't understand it. I don't think it's then it's the criticism of what we came up with is really fair. Prop 0, actually, you could fit it in 1 page. It's been done in basically every city in Vermont has the mechanism for citizen initiative, voters initiative, and Burlington is the only city that doesn't allow that. We simply just want to bring our charter up to the standard in Vermont, and that is something that's happening already throughout Vermont. As far as the issue about like something illegal could be could made you should read the ballot question itself. Actually, the provision for lawfulness, you can't put something that's against the Vermont Constitution or the United States Constitution, and the city attorney is within their power to point that out and to say this is unlawful. So then it's not really, this can't make it on the ballot. Please go to everyonebutburlington.com. You can see there how other municipalities charters provision these powers to their voters, and read for yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, FaRied. And Billy, see if I can remember my phrasing of the question because it isn't written down, but
I'll take it again.
yeah, how can we address any concerns with the citizen-driven ballot initiatives?
How can we address any concerns?
Well, do you have ideas for addressing these concerns?
Sure. I mean, I understand the concerns that like Councillor Shannon has voiced, for example, about potential misunderstandings on the ballots. But you know, like FaRied said, we're kind of in that situation already that, you know, someone could misunderstand an initiative that's been placed by the council. For me, I think it's more valuable to have the direct democracy aspect than to be weighed down by concerns about, you know, people misunderstanding the policy issues what are on there. I have trust in the citizens of Burlington to be able to make voting decisions. That's why I think that you know, why I should run for city council is because I think I can convince people to make a good decision for me. And I think that, you know, it's worthwhile enough to bring our charter in line with the other cities across Vermont, and that direct democracy is a good thing, and that there's enough protection, you know, but legal protection to this initiative that it's not as big a concern for me with regard to, you know, being confused about what's going on there. And you know, another concern that's been brought up is that special interest groups, moneyed interests, will be able to use their advantage to bring new ballot initiatives to the table. But frankly, I think that we're in that situation already. I mean, if an interest group wants to get an issue across to the city council or a petition onto the ballot, they have the resources to do that. You know, they can make a petition, they can make a campaign. I don't see why it shouldn't be even easier to do that. And I think again, I have trust in the people of Burlington. I think they're intelligent people based on what who I've been talking to, who I've met since I've lived here. I think it's a good initiative.
Thank you. All right, how are we doing on time? We're pretty
good.
good shape. Okay, so I think I can do one of our original questions again now. So I want to ask Joan. No, I started with you last time. Sorry. I want to ask FaRied.
I don't think I've started in a while. I'll go first.
All right, you just went last, but okay. Billy, what specific skills and experience do you bring to the job of counselor that would make people want to vote for you?
Sure. Well, I haven't held elected office before, but most counselors did not hold elected office before they joined the Burlington City Council. And I have somewhat extensive experience in public policy. So right now I work for the State Department of Finance. Have been there for not a year, for almost a year now. Before that, I worked as the representative for the communications union districts, which are deploying a broadband internet across rural Vermont. And before that, I worked for USDA Rural Development at their office in Montpelier, working on rural capacity initiatives, community development initiatives, programming, and that sort of thing. I also have experience in the nonprofit sector. I've been on the board of 2 nonprofits. And I think that this kind of speaks to the skills that I bring to the table. I'm pretty good at policy analysis, at writing and communication. I also used to work as a journalist. I'm pretty good at understanding financing and budgeting, like the work that I'm doing now. I'm also in graduate school at UVM for public administration, which I guess is not really worth that much, but suffice it to say, I am very nerdy about government and policy and ways that it can improve people's lives. I think that we have a responsibility to use the tools that we have as a democracy to make life better for everyone. And I think that I have the skills to be able to do that as a city councilor in Burlington.
Great, thanks, Billy. Thanks for helping me keep it fair, because you were right about that. So Joan, same question. What specific skills or experience do you bring to the job of city councilor, make us want to vote for you?
Well, I've been doing it for a long time, which makes some people want to vote for me and some people want to vote against me. I get it. But I do think I'm tried and I'm tested, and I've been a stable force on the city council. And I know that that's not necessarily exciting to a lot of people, but I have been able to navigate some really, really challenging situations that we've faced. It took us 10 years, I think, to get out of the Burlington Telecom debacle, where $17 million of taxpayer money was spent without our knowledge. And I think I did a good job of navigating that. And that was one of our most difficult issues that we've gone through. In recent years, I think I have, it's been really hard for everybody. I think anybody in public office would tell you that. And I think that I have been able to stand true to myself, to my constituents, to be introspective, and to speak my truth as best that I can, acknowledging that I may be wrong. I have a lot to learn, and I learn by listening to people I disagree with. I learn a lot more by listening to people I disagree with than by listening to the people I agree with. And we all have a tendency to live in our silos. I really try not to do that. I also, certainly when I have an opinion, I'm passionate about it. You'll know what that opinion is, and you may vehemently disagree with me, and I will still listen to you, even if I vehemently disagree with you. And I think over the course of time, some people who have been very angry with me at some points in time because of that characteristic have kind of come to respect it, maybe in part because you can trust what I say is what I mean. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. And FaRied, we're gonna go with this question as well. Yeah, I'll read it again just for fun. So what specific skills or experience are you bringing to the job of city councilor that we would want to vote for you?
I would be the first to acknowledge that I don't have all the answers or even most of the answers. Either John or Will probably be more skilled in making policy development. I have been on the receiving end of policies, and that experience is what drives me to engage in organizing the community, which is what I've been doing, and serving my community that way. I feel like I'm good at bringing people together. I actually, my professional training is in IT, so I can read code and I can feed a crowd. That's what I know, but I also know a lot of really good, knowledgeable people. And I believe leadership is really not about your technical knowledge, but it's about your ability to listen to people and to bring people together. I feel that many in Burlington who don't have the privilege of paying attention to local politics or to let alone to run for office have not been heard. And I learn, I serve my community through my volunteer work. This is the common theme, that people feel like they don't matter anymore. And I do think elections have its place, but we need to make sure that people matter in elections. So then elections matter to people. And I think that's the understanding that I will be bringing to the job. And I love this community. I want us to survive through this challenging time with our values intact. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm so impressed with all your answers. How do I follow up? You're going to take anything from online? Do you get any chat questions or anything like that we should look in on, or
Probably should wrap it up.
do our closing statements?
Yeah.
I don't know. We didn't write down a time. We did say we could give you a couple of minutes each for that. Now it becomes very important what order to use, but I'm going to start actually with Joan, because I think that's where I'm at right now for a couple minutes to, reflect back and close out here.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to use a few seconds to say that question 8 is not something that every town in Vermont has. That is, there is an element of that in terms of the advisory questions that other communities in Vermont do have, but it goes far beyond what other communities have. And even Winooski has limitations on that power that are not in this proposal. I do want to say thank you to the many people who have supported me over the years, and especially in the hard times, because we've become a very divided community, and that's sad to me. And I do appreciate that everybody here is doing this because we love this community. We see things going wrong. I always say, you know, Burlington is like this incredible political garden, and in your own garden, you see all of the weeds that you don't necessarily see when you go to visit other places. And there are so many gardeners in this community that are focused on tending those weeds, those things that are wrong with our community, and working very hard at weeding the garden. We may not agree on what the weeds are, but we are all very committed to this garden, to making Burlington what we think that Burlington should be. And I appreciate both Billy and FaRied for running, because that's what creates the community discussion. People aren't as interested in talking with me actually when there isn't a race. And so I appreciate this opportunity to engage with voters and to hear more about what's on everybody's mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. I think I get this right. So FaRied, do you have any closing thoughts?
So I want to let people know that the majority of the city council actually signed our petition for Proposition 0, including Ali Jang and Ben Travers. So across party support. While it's true that Winooski does have a more robust process, our hope is actually to address that. And there's nothing stopping the city council from, after knowing that this is what's happening, to also put forward their proposed guardrails to the concerns that the council raised. I do think for both these ballot questions, if the objections were raised in good faith, the opportunity to have proposed their own version was never closed. And we actually had to change for question 7 midway. We already had 1,000 signatures, and we had to redo from scratch, recollect another 1,000 signatures, and then reach the 2,000 limit because of concerns raised. So what I wanted to say earlier is, so we have this system, but sometimes the whole garden is poison, and we need to come up with address problems at their root, and staying the course is gonna give us even further into this mess. So I would like to say that people should really read for themselves. I trust people, the Burlington voters, to know what's best for them, and please come to our community dinner and discussion that will be at Democracy Creative this Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. at 266 Pine Street. Thank you.
Thanks, FaRied. Billy, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I won't, although I'm in favor, as I've mentioned, of most of the ballot initiatives, include 7 and 8. I think that Joan and FaRied have really, kind of hit on the main sides of the debate. So what I like to say is just that I know that most of you don't know me, and I'm going around door to door to try to change that as best I can. But I have only lived in Burlington for just a little over a year, so I know that I'm a newcomer. But I want to assure you that I will be tireless in representing your voices and hearing what your concerns are and finding ways to bring all those ideas together and bring solutions on the city council. That's what I'm dedicated to doing. I mean, I wake up every morning thinking, really thinking, what can I do best to benefit the world today? Because I think that I've been very blessed in my life. And I think that everyone deserves to have the same opportunities that I have. So provided you have the same kind of idea that, human rights, human housing, healthcare, that these are human rights, that we should have an environment that preserves our future going forward. Provided you share those general values with me, get in touch with me. Come to my website, wa4btv.org. Send me an email. I'll give you my phone number. I'm going door to door. Let's talk. I'd love to get to know you. I'd like to get to know all of you, to know your concerns. If you share these values of human rights, even generally, I think that I can represent you very effectively on the city council. I look forward to meeting you and discussing these issues with you. So thank you again for having me at the NPA. I hope to attend more of these meetings, although I don't live in Ward 5. But the Ward 6 one was very interesting as well, although certainly a contrast in some ways. So thank you again.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
All right, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
2 minutes over.
Great. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us at the NPA tonight. And we'll see you again on the third Thursday of next month. And remember to send in your ballot or drop it in a box.